Welcome to my channel, Sewing with Tay. I'm Fantasia from the Aya Emporium, and today we are making hand knit pants. So the supplies we need is chunky yarn, a pair of scissors, lighter, and some measurement tape. So if you've been here before, we're going to start this process off with a slip knot, which we've done before. So we are going to make a hump. We're going to twist it and then pull the working yarn through that loop, just like that. We're going to make that loop 3 fingers tall, and then we're going to start our chain. So you take your index finger and thumb inside the loop, pull the working yarn through, and lay it down flat. It'll start to make this braid just like this. And I feel like this is a little bit fast, but I've done a couple of these videos, so if you haven't seen like the basis of getting started or any other projects, I would definitely check those out. So for here, I'm just going to make chains for how wide I think this needs to be. Mind you, these are pants, so this is going to be the part that goes around my waist. So instead of counting loops, I'm just going to measure it / test it on my body to see if it will easily go around my hips. You want to make sure that all of your loops are consistent in size. For this chain, I used the 3 finger width, and now I'm taking out my tape measure and I'm measuring how wide it is, how much it stretches, because I made these ones before and the pants were very big and I don't know what I was thinking. So this time I did it again and I'm like, I'm going to measure it and see if it's the length that I want it to be. So here's my last loop. I'm going to insert the tail from the beginning of my chain into the loop that is below the standing loop. So I just inserted it into there. I'm checking it to make sure it's going to stretch. Then I'm going to take that in and put it back through the other side, the original starting loop. I'm doing it that way so I'll end up with a circle. On the top edge of this chain, I'm going to go inside that space and pull up my working yarn to make standing loops. I call them standing loops because they're not the same as the foundational chain loops. So we're going to go inside the chain on that top space. So you'll see the space there, and we're going to pull our loop up. And we're going to continue to do this all the way around the ring that we currently have. So I did not count my loops before this. I personally don't like to count loops unless I have to. And for this process, I didn't feel like I needed to at this moment. So I decided to count my loops afterwards just to make sure that I wasn't missing any when I get further down the line. So this is the end. I'm going to make a new loop here just to make sure there's no spaces or gaps between my loops. So this is what it looks like. And now I'm just going to take my working yarn. I'm going to go down into my standing loop and pull my yarn up towards me. You want to always make sure that you're pulling the yarn up towards you so that you don't mix your knit stitches and your purl stitches. So we're going to always pull it up towards you, up away from the table, and you don't want to mix them up. So always pulling the yarn up, keeping that yarn length consistent to 2 fingers. I'm just going to continue to knit around this circle. Again, I'm not counting the rows. So my goal right now is to knit down the garment, which is basically around the waist, until I get to what's going to be my crotch point. Now this here is where I struggled because I was expecting it to be around 14 to 15 inches. Typically the back crotch point is a lot longer, but this is kind of level front to back. So I wasn't exactly sure how that was going to turn out, but we can't do nothing until we finish it. So I'm just going to continue working in a circle. So here is my top of pant, and I decided to fold it now because the loop started to curl up and it started to get difficult to quickly pull the yarn through. So now I folded it in half. Some of these loops might come apart. You just want to re-loop them when you get to them or re-loop them now. So just as long as you don't forget to add that yarn back, you should be okay. So from here, I'm going to continue to knit my loops, always remembering to pull it up towards me. Some people get confused when you have to move or shift their project. So you want to always make sure whichever way you're knitting, you're pulling the yarn up towards you. And now that I have it on the half folded, I'm going to flip it every time I get to the end of the row to make sure, one, that I don't miss any on the sides, and to make it easy to pull the yarn up towards me. Okay, here's half of my pants that I have so far. In hindsight, I realized this was too long still, and I ended up going back at the end to shorten it, but we'll get there. So for now, I finally have counted my loops, and now I'm going to show you guys how I make the legs. So I'm going to knit. I'm knitting the back or either side because there's no front or back currently, but I'm going to knit one side, and then I've already counted my loops, and it ended up being 16. So I'm going to knit 8 loops on the one side, and then instead of continuing across, I'm going to knit up. So I have the 8 loops on the top. Now I'm going to go up above it and knit the 8th loop on the top of the pant, and then I'm going to knit back around. So what this is currently doing, it is making another circle. So when you get to the end, you will have kind of closed off the center of the pant, and then we're going to knit in a circle. So you can see as I got to the end, now I'm going to continue to just knit all the way around. So you're going to do that until you get to the end of your pant. I'm going to speed this up a bit, and you can start to see the progression of the leg. It starts to look like a little pair of shorts, and you can determine how long you want them to be. I'm a short girly, so I know my inseam length is not that long, so I'm just going to go until I think it's long enough for my leg. So I'm just going to continue to knit this leg in a circle till I get it to the end, and then I'm going to cast it off. So then I'm going to switch over to the other leg and show you how to add your yarn. If you watch any of my other videos, we're going to kind of do this the same way. We're going to find a stitch, and then I'm going to tie a new yarn into it, and then we're going to knit as normal. So I'm going to start on the outside. I'm going to put my knot on the inside. I'm going to double tie it tight, and then I'm going to knit as normal. So you'll see me here, I'm starting my knit stitches, and you'll see I'm pulling the yarn down towards the table. Well, I'm doing that because I'm knitting in a circle, and instead of moving the pant, like flipping it around, I'm just knitting it while it's still laying flat on the table. So you'll see me pulling those stitches down, and then I'm pulling the top of the pant up. So that's what that looks like and why. So once I get to the middle, I don't want like a hole at my crotch. So I'm going to kind of like add a stitch just to make sure that the pants are kind of connected. So I'm going inside the knit here just to make sure there's no gap between the legs. So you see I kind of pulled that stitch around just to make sure there's not going to be a gap. Don't want to lose that stitch there. Then I'm going to continue to knit around. Then we're going to continue to knit around the leg, and then we'll knit in circles just like we did for the other leg until we get to the end. I will show you how to cast off on this leg because I didn't film it on the other leg. Important note is that you want to be consistent in your loop size. You don't want your loops to be too big because you don't want breezy, spacey looking pants with like big holes in them. So I tried to keep my loops 2 fingers wide, keep them consistent in the space between the loops to the point where I am ready to cast off. So we're going to knit 2 loops, 1 and 2. The first loop will go over the second loop, and you're always going to have 2 loops, so you're going to knit 1 more loop for 2 loops, first loop over the second one. This method is on my YouTube channel, so if you want an up close, more detailed way of doing it, you can please check out my ways to finish your hand knit projects video. So first loop goes over the second one. You always need 2 loops, and then you will put a new loop, and then first loop over the second loop. And you continue this process all the way till you get to the end and you only have 1 loop left. This is hard to see because I'm working on the bottom of the pant, so I'm not going to speed this up. I'm going to let it stay at the speed so you can see it real time, and it'll be easier to see once I get to the top. So you see me here making my second loop. That first one goes over the second one. You do want to make sure these loops are a little bit bigger because you don't want this to be tight, and I've had to redo my pant a few times because these were too tight. So pull your loop through, make a new loop. So make a new loop here, pull it through, make a new loop, and pull it through. You have 1 more, I think. Make a new loop and pull it through till you only have 1 loop left. Then you take the tail, pull the tail through your loop, and pull it snugly. Then I like to take my tail and pull it through where I started and then back to where I just came from to kind of make a little knot, and then pull that tight, and then you are done with the cast off on your leg. You'll do that same process for both hems of both pant legs. So this is what she looks like. I still feel like she's big and fluffy, but I guess that's just what these pants are. But I was determined to make the crotch sit a little bit higher. So I decided to take out my starting chain, which ended up taking me a lot more time than what I wanted it to be. So I had to kind of work backwards and take out that top edge to free my standing loops. And then I was going to take out a couple of rows so that I can shorten it. So this is what I have. I'm going to take out some of these rows to make the length from the top edge to where the legs split apart shorter. And then I'm going to attempt to cast off to give it a different finish, and hopefully it will be a little bit more secure on my waist. Right now, this is a square, meaning that it doesn't have shaping. So you see how this just looks like a rectangle. But I wanted to see if I could pull the yarn in by reducing loops to give it a little bit of a curved shape so the pants will naturally sit on my waist and I won't have to do elastic. A lot of people said do elastic, or a lot of people said try the drawstring. I did try a drawstring, didn't like it. I didn't look it up, honestly, for the elastic. I wanted to, but I never got around to it. And I just decided I was going to take it apart and try it again. So I took out like 3 or 4 rows because it was stretching a lot. The issue is the front of your pant to your crotch is normally shorter than the back of your pant to your crotch. So I ended up knitting 2 extra rows on the back, the bottom, and not knitting the front. So I ended up adding 2 extra rows in the back just to give some little curve to get over your butt. And then I ended up decreasing my stitches. So right now I'm still taking out the rows until I find one that I think looks good enough. So it is coming up. You see me thinking about it. Sorry, y'all. This is a voiceover, but I think I'm finally there. So I'm going to reduce my stitches by combining 2 loops and pulling my working yarn through to reduce the number of loops I have. So I'm going to knit 1 regular, put 2 together, and then pull the yarn through. Knit 1 regular, overlap 2 loops, and pull the yarn through both of them. So I did this all the way around and it worked out with the numbers. So cross 2, knit them to make them 1, and then knit 1 regular. So this is kind of a way to add some shaping, some contouring to your projects. I've also done this with like hand knit sweaters. I have not done a video for that one, but that's also a way to kind of reduce the width at the waist and the shoulder so that it's not so boxy. But it does make the knit stitches look a little bit different. They kind of pull directionally, but it was fine. I just wanted to test this out to see if it would work. Once I've gone all the way around the pants, combining those stitches to reduce them, then I'm going to go around and knit all of my stitches once so that they are now like kind of solidified. They're settled in my mind. Well, I figured out I was going to do a cast off to finish this, the same cast off I did on the leg. And when I tell you, I did it like 5 times because I couldn't get it right. So if you're going to do something similar to this and you want to do the cast off method at the top of your pants, you have to make this cast off very big so that it doesn't reduce the width at the waist, because I kept doing it small and it got too tight. So you see how big those loops are? They're like 5 inches. So make them super long so that it doesn't reduce the width of the top of your pant. So I did this process all the way around. This is the same process for hemming that I did on my pants. So we have 2 loops. The first loop goes over the next one. You always have 2, so we're going to knit 1 more. And then the first one goes over the next one. So I'm going to do that all the way till I get back to where I started. So I did try the drawstring method. I didn't like it because for it to not be too tight, it made a lot of spaces in between the stitches, which I didn't like. I still personally like this method. You just have to make these loops very big. Otherwise, this will get very tight and you can't get it on. So you need to make sure that this opening is wide enough to get over your thighs and your hips, especially if you're curvy like me. So I'm getting close to the end. So this braid detail I think is really cute. Now, to say, I had to take my pant apart to put this cast off method at the top of my pant. I don't know how to do this method other than what I just did. Just like we did previously, when you get to your last loop, you pull your yarn through to make a knot, and then you find a knot on the chain to kind of tie it off, and then you want to cut your tail short and then tuck it inside the pant somewhere. See, this waistband, with it being bigger, has a lot of stretch, and it pulled up, and I feel like the waist is level. The thigh was a little tight, but it came together, y'all.